Let's introduce my friend from across the pond, Jared Turner, who's the vocalist for melodic emo band Keep This Up and The Spare Code. And he has even released a few solo albums. Fun fact, back in 2021, when Jared first started releasing his own EP, I actually had the chance of interviewing him on my blog, Rats Are Stars. But since it's been a while since he has released his solo albums and EPs, I think it was time to catch up since our last interview. And I gotta say, Jared is vocally talented and is even a great songwriter too. Just check out this song.
You say I've got nothing to lose. Go ahead, make my mind up and choose. Stuck between elation and distress. It's too late now to second guess. Do for my mind starting to slip. Look at how my fake smile's chipped. You say you lose the bad and seize the good, but don't you think I would if I could? Don't you think I would if I could? Don't cry over the pieces on the floor, but it's the only thing I had which was pure. I keep trying, but this hope I can't believe it. This ice has got a little too thick.
Now, let's get to know the vocalist behind The Spare Code and Keep This Up.
So, thank you, Jared, for doing this interview with me. It's been like such a long time since we actually had done one.
It's certainly been a while. Yeah, no trouble at all. No trouble at all.
Tell me, like, how has everything been for you, like going for your solo projects and then like the two bands you're in? Tell me how those things are going.
Yeah, it's been busy would be one way of describing it. I suppose when we last spoke, it was like right at the very start of starting to put music out there, and now it feels like those quote unquote baby steps are a long time ago now, really. Kind of an album and an EP later, plus a handful of other tracks. So yeah, it's been a busy one.
So between both of the bands you're in, what do you do in each band?
I suppose it's much of the same, I guess. So Keep This Up, I'm the vocalist for that band. But I have a good arm in the writing process and the mixing process as well. And Despair Code is much the same, albeit a slightly lesser hand in the writing journey there, but still obviously taking a good lead on that front. But yeah, again, vocals and guitar and what have you on that front as well. So quite similar, I guess. But I suppose the difference between the two is Keep This Up are playing live. So live, it's just worrying about the vocals, which is one less headache for me, really.
So we keep this up since you guys have performed, pretty sure a lot of places locally, where you live. What has been like your favorite venue or club that you guys perform at? Like, what's your most memorable experience?
I would say probably there was a show that we did in Newcastle not too long ago, which was for the Mind charity, which sort of dealing with mental health, and that was playing with a band called Amongst Thieves, which I've known about for years and years and years. And I think for me it was that aspect of playing with a band like that, which I'd known about for so long, um, was pretty cool. I mean, the rest of the bands on that bill, such as Negatives, were amazing. But I think that was probably a highlight for me, I would say.
What is you guys' goal with Keep This Up?
I think I would somewhat be lying if I said we didn't want to get this to a point where we could do it full time, that we could be touring and so on and so forth and exploring different places. Um, but I think the bigger aspects to it is just a handful of guys just looking to have a bit of a laugh and have a bit of fun. And I think if something comes of that, i.e., touring and bigger and bigger shows and better shows and what have you, then great. But I think for us, it's really just trying to have a handful of memories that we can look back on in 10, 20, 30 years time and go, that was good fun.
Which band between the both that you're in would you like to have basically grow in popularity? Like if you had a choice.
The choice. I mean, ideally it'd be both, I guess. I think it's probably Keep This Up at the moment. I feel like, and that's solely because that one's moving quicker at the minute. Like a lot of stuff is actively happening for the band. So probably Keep This Up. I think Despair Code hasn't really gained the legs to start running properly yet. So it is difficult to say with that one. So I think I'd have to go with Keep This Up.
If you guys did tour like around the world, where would you actually want to go?
I think the US for sure. And probably Australia. I think those two countries would be kind of high on my bucket list. Um, but yeah, probably those two places. I mean, that's not to say that I wouldn't like to do Europe or more places around the UK or Scotland or what have you. But yeah, the US for sure, and Australia as well. Both those two places would be pretty nuts.
One of our older questions. What advice would you give your younger self?
Be more confident. Probably no, 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 let me take that back. Um, Trust yourself more. I think that would be the advice. Trust yourself more. Especially when I was younger, there was a big aspect of like, I suppose it still is like a huge aspect of perfectionism to what I do, and having it be okay that you have to get from A to B, which means you have to start at point A, which means you're not going to be kind of top tier or even mediocre straight off the bat. I think accepting that more would have helped, I think, greatly, especially on the musical journey. It's yeah, I think that'd be trust myself more and trust the process.
If you had to give any advice to like people that are like new, like really new or wanting to be a musician, what advice would you give them?
Definitely put the hours in. Definitely put the hours in, because without that, you it won't go anywhere. All of these people that are insanely talented, and for sure a lot more talented than I am. They didn't just get there because of some divine being or stroke of luck. They've had to work hard for that. So yeah, definitely put in the hours, but also do it for the right reasons. So I think what I mean by that is, don't if you're in a band, don't do it because you think X, Y, and Z will sell and that will be popular, but it doesn't really align with what you want to do or who you are. I would say it's, you know, if you're making the music you enjoy, writing the music you enjoy, even just covering the music that you enjoy, it'll be a lot more fulfilling. And there's a lot more longevity in that. So I think those two things: put in the hours and stick with what you enjoy.
I think also within like stepping within mental health, I think having like a mental clarity of like knowing like how you can handle like certain stressors in your life, because they can't handle being in the music business with a lot of, like, I'm pretty sure you have been through a lot of struggles with getting into not just your solo stuff but like within both bands.
Yeah, I mean, Despair Code less so. I think that's been more of an easier process because it's purely bedroom based, if you will. Like it's just two guys just writing music in other parts of the world, which is great. But there's no external pressure of that. I think with Keep the Stuff, especially, um, as you say, then from a mental health perspective, you've got this huge aspect of um, performing in front of people and kind of giving a persona of yourself, which isn't necessarily true. Um, which I think is fine. I think that's part of the showmanship, but I think sometimes you don't quite realize how much that can take a toll, especially if you're already having a pretty shitty day of trying to be this larger than life character that people want to see perform. Um, it can be quite a challenge. So yeah, definitely, I would agree with you on that front. The mental stressors that are involved, even just from performing live. There are so many others that come in along the way, but even from performing live can be hugely disadvantageous, um, depending on the mindset at the time.
Do you guys have like a manager to kind of, or is that like for bigger bands?
Typically, it's a bigger band. I think we've just signed up with Reaction Management, which is great, and I think we're looking to be with them at least for the next year, I believe. Um, but yeah, they're great. It's obviously very early days with them, but yeah, hoping that will lead to kind of better shows, better exposure, um, and they're a good bunch of guys as well, which is great.
So like when you guys have like choose these venues, is it just you guys, or you have like someone kind of helping you, or it's like word of mouth? And
It really just is us. I think that's one of the things that we're hoping that being with Reaction Management will help, but it's really just us, and by us, I would say mainly for Keep This Up, it falls to Chris. Chris does a lot of the gig bookings and what have you. So some of them will come through. We've put on a show, and we've got another band in, and they're putting on a show, so they get us back out for that, which is great. Um, Other ones is it can be through recommendations, but a lot of it is really just through grafting and really just pushing and asking venues, oh, we want to put on a show, would you be game for that? And it's yeah, it takes so much time, even just to book one show, it takes so much time.
have you guys ever made or sold any merch on your at your as a shows?
Yeah, we used to. I think it's been a little while since we've had merch. I think we've just got a new line in, which I think was based on the EP, which is all on our online store, but we haven't had it in person yet. But I think it seems to be selling well from what I can gather. Well for a relatively unknown local band anyway.
It's fun when a lot of fans like when they really support your music and get the merch even when they're local bands.
It's nice, and I think we had one recently, and um, I think we played a show. Played a show. When was that? That'd have been last year, last September, I think, around that time. And someone bought a T-shirt, and we ended up playing a festival this year, which was a local festival. And seeing that person come out to the festival in our shirt was like, that's pretty cool. We weren't shit enough to to stop them from coming back.
How's your solo music going?
The solo stuff's in an interesting place, I think, at the moment. So I think the 2 years previously, so I think you and I did that interview. I think it was when Pure was just about to come out or had just come out, one of the two. And then there was lockdown and all of that kind of crap and everything else. And I think I ended up releasing another track and then decided I was going to release an EP, which then the EP became a longer EP and then became an album. So that was like 2 years in the making, which was just a labor of love, really. And then that dropped, I think, like the start of this year, the back end of last. Which it took so much time to get that done. But then I think this year I've released like an extra song, but I haven't really done too much else on the solo act front, really. I think after doing the album, it was like I've kind of spent everything that I need to spend for the time being doing that. Like it was just definitely worth it, but yeah, it took a lot out of me, kind of time wise and mentally as well. It was quite a big thing. So the solo stuff's kind of taken a bit of a back seat, which has allowed obviously keep this up to kind of push through. So it's kind of on the back burner. There's still a few bits being written here and there, but yeah, definitely on the back burner.
Do you think your band would like ever let you perform any of your songs from your solo stuff?
I think if I asked, they probably would. But at the same time, I don't know if I necessarily would. So, and the reason I say that is like the stuff that I wrote for the album was never excuse me, was never intended to be played live. I mean, you can play it live for sure, don't get me wrong, but I think it was written from a perspective of being so honest. And I don't think it'd necessarily be the right vibe for what the band is going for, albeit the lyrics are still very honest, but in a very different way. Probably not quite as transparent as I was on the album. And I don't think I'd feel overly comfortable with playing that for someone if they're looking for a fun night out. Let's put it that way.
So I think it would be a good idea if you did try to do it live.
If I were going to do them live, I'd probably do them more as like almost like acoustic tracks, really, as opposed to kind of like a full band piece.
It's like I've seen like a lot of emo cover bands, so like they'll always like sneak in a few of their own original songs. So in a way, you could do that with your band, kind of sneak in one of your songs.
Yeah, it'd almost be kind of a subtle cover, but not really a cover.
What is your thought, like if you listen to the song or look back on the lyrics that you wrote, what do you think about it then? Like, do you think is there anything you want to change about it, or you think you could have done better?
Lyrically, no. I think lyrically, I'm really happy with both of those tracks. I think, in fairness, I think most, if not all, songs lyrically, I don't think I would change, whether that's those two or otherwise, because I think it's like a snapshot of where you were at the time. I think both of them probably musically, I'd probably remix both of them because I think I was only really starting to learn how to mix at the time and produce music properly at the time. So I'd probably do that. That would probably be the biggest thing that I would change. I think everything else I'm fairly happy with. I think it's one of those where you can quite easily get into this rabbit hole of, oh, I wish I could change this and I wish I could change that and add this and take that away. And I think for me, it's like it's almost like a set and forget. Like once it's done, it's done. And you may look at it in like 10 years time or 3 years time or what have you and think, Christ, I wish I could do this, this and this. And but that's a snapshot of where you were at that moment in time. And it's nice to have kind of a look between even just Pure and I Am Nothing of the difference and the improvements along the way as well. So like understanding how to do X, Y, and Z between from trial and error through Pure was then implemented on I'm Nothing, and you can kind of hear that musical journey grow more and more throughout. So even from those two to the album, it's so I think I've gone a very long way of saying I'd probably remix it, but that would probably be about as much as I did. I think I'm quite happy to see where the journey has been from and started through to kind of where the journey's at.
When you wrote those 2 tracks, do you remember like what went through your mind at that time on how like you felt with the tracks and well, mainly more like creating the music within the tracks and writing the lyrics?
I think musically it was the intention was I think I was someone that was very, very used to writing a lot of heavier stuff in terms of musically, so a lot of metal and metalcore and what have you. And I think especially for Pure, that was something quite different. So I was like, oh, okay, this is quite cool. And I Am Nothing again was the same sort of idea. Is just I don't want to write what I've always written. So musically, it was quite different. And then I think in terms of the lyrical process, it was as it always is just trying to be as honest as I can be. Of where is my it's usually where's my head at that moment in time and what is it that I'm actually thinking, and then how can I encapsulate that into 3 minutes essentially, which can produce pretty interesting results. And I think it's quite a good snapshot. It's, I suppose for me, especially for the solo stuff, the lyric writing has almost become kind of like my mental health journaling, if that makes sense at all. So it's always a snapshot of where things were at the time. So I think lyrically, I think it was like, yeah, this works for the track, but it's also a good snapshot and insight in terms of where I'm at the moment. It's honest. And that's like the main thing for me is I just try and be honest with what I'm thinking, what I'm writing. So yeah, I think that's where I was lyrically and musically at the time.
Yeah, the dream tour with like any band you want to tour, whether it's like dead or alive, what would your dream tour be?
As in me playing with those bands.
As in you playing with those bands or like bands that you want to see?
If it were playing with, I would say probably Sleeping with Sirens. And yeah, I'm trying to think genre wise what would fit with Keep This Up. Sleeping with Sirens for sure.
It can always be different. I mean, I've seen like a lot of bands where like the genre of what's like opening for a specific band does not even match.
Yeah, I suppose on that front, probably Architects maybe as well. I think, yeah. Actually, I'll take Sleeping with Sirens off of that. I think probably Architects and Enter Shikari. I think those two would be the two which would be just nuts to play with. Those two, I think if it was like a 3-band lineup, it'd be those two that I'd like to play with. I think yeah, I think that would be it. Keep This Up, Architects, and then Shikari. I think that'd just be the most wild night. Yeah, I think that'd be incredibly good fun.
What about bands that you'll like to see live?
I'd like to see live. I think Bring Me the Horizon, but only if they did anything before That's the Spirit. Anything after that, I'm not overly interested. So probably them. Who else would I like to see? Fever 333, but I've got them next year, so that one will be happening. Maybe actually Let Live. I never, and Every Time I Die, those two as well. Let Live, I never got the chance to see, and Every Time I Die, I never got the chance to see, and neither are a band anymore. But yeah, those two, if I had the chance, if they ever got back together and decided they were going to have another go at touring and what have you, those two would be wild, and maybe Taking Back Sunday as well. I think probably those three.
What is your favorite meal? Well, I guess vegan meal to cook.
I think that there's quite a few that I could go for, but I think it would probably be we do these kind of I suppose it's like a vegan fried chicken, but you use like king oyster mushrooms, and it's just great. It just hits the spot every time. So probably that I would say is kind of like an easy go-to. There's not a lot of messing around. Yeah, probably that.
Vegan pizza once at some place. There's a lot of like some roommates. They want to. How do I put this? They try to go on like this health diet thing, even though they're not vegetarian or vegan. They're just like, let's just try some vegan pizza. I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm very open to trying any new food as long as it's not alive or moving. I tried a pizza. It was pretty good. I liked it.
It can be. I think vegan pizza is so hit and miss. It's but yeah, it's not too bad. Some of them aren't too bad.
So how did you get into the journey of going vegan? Because I know you told me you've tried vegetarianism and then you were a meat eater. So how did you get to?
I think for me, it came down to health, of just feeling like crap when eating meat, and then so I dialed that back, and one dietary issue after the next, ended up cutting it right back. I think the only kind of non-vegan thing I was having was, I think, eggs. I think it was like the only thing that I was still eating. I just thought, "Oh, do you know what? Let's just see how we go for a month." After doing it for a month, I kind of felt 10 times better than I had done in quite a while. I was like, well, that probably makes a lot of sense then, and kind of just stuck with it. And I think then more of the educational piece came through, which is probably one of the bigger reasons why I wouldn't go back to eating meat. Not that I didn't know of these things before, but I think my eyes are a little bit more open to them now. But yeah, ultimately it came down to health reasons. I think just trying to improve the way that I felt, and not just feeling in pain, I guess, all the time. So that's what it came down to, really.
Is there any like supplements or anything you have to like take? I guess nutrients that you're kind of lacking. Is there anything you have to like substitute for that?
Not really. I think you can do. Don't get me wrong. Of course you can. You can do kind of multivitamins and what have you. And I probably should, I guess, at some point. But if you vary the diet enough, you can kind of get away with it. I suppose it's like eating meat, really. It's so long as you have that varied diet, you're probably all right. You don't need to worry about kind of getting the extra X, Y, and Z. And veganism's not really much different. You just kind of get your sources of X, Y, and Z in different places than you would have done before, if that makes sense.
Are there any celebrities that you would like to meet?
I suppose there'd be three. There'd be Sam Carter from Architects, Raoul Reynolds from Enter Shikari, and Jason Aylan Butler from Fever 333. And I think I kind of picked those three because they're three people that are quite happy to speak out against things, whether that be political or what have you. They're three people that are quite happy to have their opinion on things. And I think they're the three of them are quite intelligent people as well. So I think just to be able to have conversations with those three would be great. I think it's like I say, I think it's less so about the music with those three, more so about just who they are and their viewpoints and their insight. I think that would be great.
If you had to choose any of those three to like be featured on any track, like either band you're working with, who would you want featured?
I'd have any of them really. Probably Jason Alon Butler. I think like the other two are also recognizable just by their voice, but I think he's got just such an iconic voice, and his scream is also super iconic. You can just pick him out of a crowd, no problem at all. So yeah, probably him, I would say.
Inspired you to be a musician? Is it anyone close to you in your family or anyone you look up to?
In terms of musicianship, at least. I think at the time when I first started learning guitar, it was like there was a guitar around, and it seemed like it seemed interesting. It's slowly started to pick it up, but I think it wasn't until like kind of 11 or 12, I wouldn't say, where I really started to get into it and kind of think, actually, I want to learn this more, and I'm going to learn what I want to learn. And so it's kind of always just been I've just, same with anything really. I need to be as good as I can possibly be, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm the best, but it's the best that I can be at that moment in time. So guitar has always been that piece which I picked up early on, and I think from a family friend kind of showing me the very, very basics, it was like, right, how can I do more than this? How can I learn more? How can I do this, do that? And that's kind of pushed me. I think if I were to say these days though, of like a family member, I suppose, that would inspire me, it'd be my sister. Incredibly talented, far more talented than I can ever dream of being. But I think the way that she writes and the way that she thinks about the kind of the melodies and things like that, I've got a lot of time for that. I think she's great. So yeah, I suppose I've gone kind of a long-winded way away from the question, but I think, yeah, to begin with, no, but I'd say from a family perspective now, it'd be my sister that kind of inspires me the most, I would say.
Do you ever have your sister like kind of help you write any songs?
Not really. Not really. Occasionally I'll show her different things and say, what's your thoughts on this? And I know she does the same to me, but albeit it's not too often. But yeah, I know it's something that both of us have toyed about with doing together, even just writing a piece together, but it's just time. Neither of us have ever really got around to it.
That's basically all I got. You have any questions for me?
I don't think so. I think it's always good fun doing these things, and it's always interesting to see what questions come up. I think I really enjoy those because I think the questions you ask always get me thinking, which I suppose is the point, really.
This next one is our latest single on Spotify. It's called Find Myself.